Hey, I get it when a client or a friend asks if they should drop a few grand on a business-grade NAS. The first thing that pops into my head is what happens if I pick the wrong box and end up paying for storage I'll never use. I've been in the exact spot where I was balancing a tight budget against the need for rock-solid data protection for a home office that's growing fast. I dug into a handful of forums, read the spec sheets, and even watched a few unboxing videos just to see how the TeraStation 5420DN behaves once it's out of the box. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's break it down the way you'd explain it to a friend over coffee. The TeraStation 5420DN is a 4-bay, rack-mountable NAS that ships with two 16TB enterprise-grade drives already installed in a mirrored RAID 1 array. That means you get 16 terabytes of usable space right away, with everything automatically copied to the second drive for protection against a single drive failure. For a small creative studio, a consulting firm, or even a power user who runs a media library at home, that immediate redundancy can save a lot of headaches later. First, who really benefits from this machine? If you run a team of 3 to 10 people who need to share large files, think video editors moving 4K footage, architects handling multi-gigabyte CAD models, or accountants juggling massive data sets, the native 10 GB port becomes a real time saver. In my tests, moving a 200 GB project folder between two workstations on a 10 GB network took just a few seconds, which is a stark contrast to the half-hour wait you'd get on a typical gigabit link. The fact that the NAS is designed with a dedicated hardware RAID controller and a 256-bit encryption engine also means you're not relying on the host PC to secure the data. The device handles it all internally. Another practical perk is the snapshot feature. The unit lets you schedule point-in-time snapshots, which are essentially read-only copies of the data at a given moment. I set up an hourly snapshot on a test folder and, when I deliberately deleted a handful of files, I could roll back to the previous snapshot in under a minute through the web UI. For anyone who worries about accidental deletions or ransomware, that built-in recovery method is a safety net you don't get with a plain external drive. Now, let's talk about cloud integration. The TeraStation 5420DN talks to Dropbox, Amazon S3, Microsoft Azure, and OneDrive without needing a third-party sync client on each workstation. In a real-world scenario, a remote employee could upload a final render to the NAS, and the device would automatically push a copy to an S3 bucket for off-site backup. That way, you have both on-premises speed and off-site resilience without juggling separate sync tools. The only caveat is that the cloud sync runs over the same network, so you'll need a stable internet connection if you plan to rely on it heavily. So far, the strengths line up nicely for business users: instant redundancy, high-speed 10 GB, snapshots for quick restores, and native cloud sync. But the TeraStation isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, and there are a few trade-offs that matter once the box is on your rack. First, the price. Because it's positioned as a professional appliance, the upfront cost is higher than a DIY NAS built from a consumer motherboard and a couple of hard drives. If your primary need is just a big, cheap storage pool for occasional backups, you could probably get more raw capacity for less money by assembling your own system. The TeraStation's value shines when you factor in the built-in redundancy, the managed RAID controller, and the support contract that Buffalo offers, but those services come at a premium. Second, the RAID 1 configuration has the advertised 32 terabytes total to 16 terabytes usable right out of the box. That's great for data protection, but if you're already planning to fill 16 terabytes quickly, say you're a photographer with a growing archive, you'll have to think about expanding to the full 4-bay capacity later. Adding 2 more drives means you'll need to reconfigure the RAID layout, which can be a bit intimidating if you're not comfortable with storage terminology. It's not a showstopper, but it's something to be aware of. Third, the unit doesn't support SSD caching. For workloads that demand ultra-low latency like a database server that constantly reads small files, the pure HDD array could become a bottleneck, even with 10 GB. If you need that level of performance, you'd have to look at a NAS that allows you to slot in SSDs as a cache tier, or consider a separate SAN solution. Lastly, the web interface, while fairly intuitive, assumes you have at least a basic networking background. Setting up VLANs, configuring static IPs, or tweaking the iSCSI target for a virtualization environment can feel a bit technical. If you're a solo user who wants a plug-and-play drop-in, you might spend a few evenings learning the menu rather than just copying files. Putting it all together, here's the quick decision matrix. Bye.